Can you follow what I'm saying here? So quiet the mind, wherever you do it. Ask the questions and receive the answers, and don't think about it. Don't go, well, I don't know about that. That sounds good. It would be good for some other people, but I'm not sure about me. Well, it was your gift. It was your antenna that picked it up. It really is for you. And this process of opening to that, I think, brings you back into being, your own being, right? You're just your being. You're not the doing. You're not the thinking. You're the being. And that being's nature is peace, love, and happiness, because that nature comes from the one consciousness that created all of this. I just want to, before I get started, I want to say thank you to the choir. Both this week and last week, the cumulative effect of your singing has made me sing all week. The songs are always like over and over. And I think you lifted us up so well, and still do today, but I just want to say that we have in this church so many volunteers who do so many great things. And so when I speak about the church choir, I should also be speaking about the people who are fixing the food, who greet you at the door, who do innumerable other things. We are a community of people who give to each other so that we might have a better collective life. And that involves the friendships you build here, and the conversations you have, and just looking into your neighbor's eyes when you may not know what's going on, but you know something is. And so, yesterday we had Sisterhood Saturday, and I think there were over 50 people there. And that is a perfect example of what I just said. People looking into each other's eyes and revealing care and insight and community. And so Gisette had something to do with that, I believe, and as always, Tammy. We're very lucky here. I want to also mention that a important teacher worldwide is going to be here at this church next Saturday. His name is Richard Lang, and Richard Lang does a headless way, and many people object, I don't want to be headless. And by the time I finish talking today, you're going to think it's the greatest thing you ever did in the world. The headless way is a way of getting beyond being absorbed with your own filter and being able to see the world as you. It's a pretty cool thing. Let me talk about the book we're doing. The book we're doing is called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And it's remarkably thin, with not too small a print. It's possible for each of you to get through this in just a few hours. I was reading it this morning, and I was carried away from the words into my own life, because he would say, stop and try this little experiment. And I would stop, and it would be like a 30-second experiment, but it began to open my mind up a little bit. I don't know if you've ever been this way, where you think you know the truth, pretty clear about it. And then someone says, well, why don't you just stop and think about that? And it begins to reveal something that the practice thoughts as you had thought, the habits, they just kind of like quiet for a second, and something new emerges and comes into your awareness. Your sense of being then is shifted by that, and this idea that if you stop thinking constantly, and I will throw in a double down on this one, if you stop thinking you're right constantly, you begin to get space for a new thought to descend from wherever they come into your consciousness. And essentially what this book is saying, that the misery that you might have experienced in your life is not predominantly from what has happened. It is from what you thought about it. And it is kind of like Shakespeare said, nothing's anything until you say it is so, until you believe it is so. And this humility that is not forced on you by this book in the least, but invited that you consider this idea that there's two ways of talking about what we call thinking. One is thought, and the other one is thinking. And thought is kind of a effortless experience. It comes essentially as a gift from the universe to you. An idea pops up. And what happens after that, when you ruminate on it and you cogitate on it, is called thinking. And according to the author here, the problem is not that you have a thought, the problem is that you do thinking. And that your thinking brings you to suffering. And the cessation of suffering happens when you stop thinking. Doesn't mean you don't have thoughts, but when you stop thinking. Now I'd like to make this a conversation known as the theory of everything. I got 20 minutes. I should be able to do that. Let me give you a metaphysical idea. And the idea is essentially that in the beginning was God. We have no better name for it, but whatever it was consciousness. It was basically consciousness and nothing else. It's almost like the universe with no planets in it. There was space for stuff, but there wasn't anything in it. And then to actually get something to be seen or known in that infinite consciousness, there was a shimmering or a quivering or a contraction, you might say. And it contracted into something. And that something then is perceived by some of the other contractions in it. And they get an image of what it is. And that becomes their world. And many of us believe that we see the world when we look out from our eyes. And it's very convenient to believe that most of the time. And it has been a part of the evolutionary process of this contraction of consciousness known as human beings to develop the way we see the world and the way we perceive it. It is essentially that everything can see things differently, and the way we see it is so that we can survive. And our brains are working, our senses, everything are working so that this walking DNA can make it to another generation. And if you don't make it to that next generation, your DNA is sayonara. But if you make it, you move on. And that selection process has brought us to the point where consciousness that had contracted from all that is into a singularity or apparent singularity of being one of us comes from a long line of other singularities that made it down to this point. And what you see is not what is, but what makes you able to survive. What goes along with that is a brain that was designed to protect you and to figure out ways to keep you safe. Because if you didn't live, you didn't have offspring. So our brains are not wired for your satisfaction, for your happiness. They're wired for you being successful, to procreate and make another generation. If that's the case, you can see how we have reduced the realm of possibilities of perception and brought them down to surviving. And because we have done that, one of the things we inherited was this idea of look out, be wary, be more attentive to what's not working than what's working. Make sure you're safe defend yourself, and if necessary, attack, flee, or sit still. So this is how consciousness, which was everything, took on some vibration, became something that recognized it as separate, developed a way to reproduce, and it came down to being you. Now, I've heard a physicist describe this experience of our sensation and our perception as being the equivalent of one of those masks you can put on, and it appears everywhere you look, it turns, everything fits, but the person next to you is not playing the same game you are, and so when they look out of their mask, they see a whole different world. And that if we were able to change out masks, we would see a different world ourselves. But the one we have is what you're using right now as your operating system, your perception system to see the world. So you have a brain which is really capable of cranking out some thought. And many of the things we have done are because we have such a complex and intricate brain. We can imagine things, we can describe things, we can change things, we can create things. Great. The negative of that is it has a predilection for the negative. It wants to see the negative and protect you. In its thinking process, when kicked into high gear, can take a neutral thing and make it terrible, make it disappointing, make it irritating, make it frightening, right? Now, most of us don't live with lions and tigers and bears anymore. The riskiest thing we do is drive home. And yet we're quite frightened much of the time. Our body are in a reactive state. And this precludes this idea of being at peace. And so the way to get to peace is to slow down this thinking process, which has served us in the past and serves us even now, but to slow that thing down and to become more receptive to the original thoughts that come in from wherever they come in. There are two theories about the brain. One is the one I just described to you, that it is a computing organic matter that takes data and processes it and puts out this. There's another theory that it's actually an antenna for ideas that come from the nous, not me, the nous sphere. And that is just a theory. But it seems to echo the experience of people who sit still with a question. An idea comes to them. The idea is fresh. It doesn't have limitations. It seems to be sweet in some way, appealing. This is just a simple idea. So let's say the idea was, what should I do with my life? And you come up with the idea, well, I would like to be a neurosurgeon. And then the brain, who wants to protect you, kicks in and says, neurosurgeon, do you know how many years that will take? And I'm not even sure you're great with math. What makes you think you can figure this out? Yada, 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 yada. It protects, depresses. So the freedom that the mind could be offering you with new ideas can be obliterated by what the author calls thinking, not thought, thinking. And the fresh idea comes in and it gets chewed up by your thinking. So the mind has actually two jobs. The first job is the one we want to emphasize today. The job of saying, tell me. Now, lately I've been up against my own limitations. And one of the things I did last night, and I have done during this week, is I have said, is a great prayer, which I learned many years ago in ministerial school. Heal what needs to be healed, reveal what needs to be revealed. But I threw in a few other phrases in there that was more specific to my situation. And I went to bed in a relatively depressed state. But I woke up happy this morning because the mind that was making me unhappy took a nap. And I woke up and I went, wow, the baseline of existence is peace, love, and happiness. The saints say this, that when you stop overworking the brain, the basic nature that you are reveals itself as peace, love, and happiness. Now, if you go back to my metaphysical beginning, pure consciousness, in the beginning, pure consciousness, if it were to describe something it has no words for because it has no itness, it would be, say, well, if you want to know what it's like for me, I'm in peace, love, and happiness, and that's all there is. I'm in a state of grace all the time. So think about the replication of the big picture in your own life. In the big picture, consciousness, which was peace, love, and happiness, decided to have an experience. And so it contracted into something individual. And in that contraction, it had an experience. It had perceptions, it had sensations, and in the end, with us, it had thoughts and judgments. It had an experience. But when that experience quiets down, what is left is the grand consciousness, the original, universal God consciousness, that simple presence. And what is its experience of itself? Peace, love, and happiness. And so in your own life, you replicate that. Your sense of separateness, which has grown enormously from the time you were born. You know, when you were born, you're not even sure that this is yours. You know, babies go, whoa, where'd that come from? Where'd it go? And you and it are on the same thingness, if there is any thingness to it. We are it. And then we're taught to contract, to become a person with a name and a history and particular ideas. And tighter the constriction from wide open consciousness to contraction. And with that, the brain learned also how to protect you from the world. And so you, glorious you, which are part of that one consciousness, now think of yourself as living in a body with certain limitations, and you think that the screen that you look through is reality. And wonder is pretty much gone, and what is left is the contraction and little else. And this book would say, the way back to peace, love, and happiness is to stop the thinking, which is to stop the contracting. And so if you can learn to stop the thinking, you can go back into a state of beingness versus your contracted thoughts about how you are and how the world is. And so it's like what happened to me between last night and this morning. Your brain takes a pause. And what emerges is what is more universal, not the contracted yourself, but the underlying peace, love, and happiness. Because even in the contracted big picture, What is the baseline of everything is still peace, love, and happiness. And in you, what is still the baseline before your thoughts and habits and perceptions and ideas hit, it is peace, love, and happiness. So the idea of tantric yoga is essentially, which is that you contracted and the way back is back there. The way of prayer is to stop the mind, not to yakety to God, but to stop the mind and get quiet. Say what it is you want and relax and let it go. Or the way of meditation is to stop your mind from jammering around in different places and just let it settle by paying attention to your breath or a mantra or many other ways, but just let your mind settle. And then what comes in through the antenna are ideas or insights or awakenings of some sort that come into your life that give you the answer to what your current situation is. Or maybe they invite you to have a new goal or to awaken to love within yourself. Or can you follow what I'm saying here? So quiet the mind, however you do it, and ask the questions and receive the answers, and don't think about it. Don't go, well, I don't know about that. That sounds good. It would be good for some other people, but I'm not sure about me. Well, it was your gift. It was your antenna that picked it up. It really is for you. And this process of opening to that, I think, brings you back into being, your own being, right? You're being. You're not the doing, you're not the thinking, you're the being. And that being's nature is peace, love, and happiness, because that nature comes from the one consciousness that created all of this. Theory of everything, I know. Big story. I want to read you a couple of quotes. This is one from the Heart of Prayer. There is just God's infinite being, assuming the appearance of all that exists, without ever ceasing to be, to know, and to love itself alone. And this one, more typed evidence of the truth. The experience of happiness is the relaxation of this process and the unwinding of self-contraction. You don't have to get more. You have to relax, because you are that which you have been seeking your whole life. Many times when we make goals because we want to get something else, right? I want to get a job so I can get some money. I want to get some money so I can be secure. I want to get some money. I want to be secure so that I can be happy. Sometimes when you ask, the goals that come to you are self-fulfilling in and of themselves, the doing of which would be joy and pleasure, the doing of which would make you feel fulfilled and creative, the doing of which might allow you to get in the flow itself. And so when we follow this, we don't become less successful when we accept the thought as it comes in pure and clean. We become more successful. For more of our natural qualities are engaged in it, and we're not restricted by our patterns of limitation and thought. So one thing I could say was, one of the things that's emerged from my self-examination is so much of the stances we take in this world, our philosophy, our conflicts, our oppositional point of view to the rest of reality, is defensive. To maintain the thought processes as they are, to maintain this sense of an identity of separateness as it is, to restrict data even from coming in that threatens the status quo. So one of my takeaways has been, in doing this process, is I have a tendency to cuss. I'll try to dial it back. I'll say it in a church voice. Allow divinity a chance to transform you by being extremely humble. Every tradition speaks of humility. Allow that to be so. The screen you're looking through is a screen, but not the screen. The truth, your perceptions as you see them, are your truth, but not universal. Get off your high horse that we don't even know we're on until someone knocks your knees out and you fall to the ground and you go, oh my God, humility would have kept me from this fall. Realize that in this world that's so divided, that really what we're called upon to be as citizens of the world that are in the process of awakening is to be the humble place in which truth can be found, not by force or not by fear, but by opening and listening. For really, our job is to be, not to control, not to limit, and not to be right, but to be. Let us pray. Let's start by let the body find a comfortable way. I've heard Alan Watts say that our sense of self is a contraction that we hold unconsciously in our bodies. Maybe. But surely when we relax, we're more open to what can come to us. So let us relax. Let us take a sigh of relief. We don't have to do it all. It's already here. So if you have an issue that you're working on, let us quiet the mind for a moment or two, maybe 30 seconds. And then ask the question and receive an answer. Let this thought land without triggering your thinking. Let it be a soft and sweet thought without the harsh, grinding thought process afterward. Let it be. And so it is. Amen. I hope you got something out of today's service. We intend to bring you things that will help you in your life become more of who you want to be, give you the freedom of forgiveness and the hope of expectancy that your life will unfold in a way that brings you joy, happiness, and is a contribution to the world. If you would like to contribute to this ministry, please go to unitytriangle.org, hit the donate button, and it will lead you into an easy way of doing that. We thank you for your attention and look forward to seeing you again here.